Orca Rudder Rampage, when the ocean's apex tricksters turn their attention to us. The dawn breeze over the Strait of Gibraltar smells of salt and diesel, a tonic that keeps sailors alert during the nerve-wracking watch between darkness and day. Captain Dan Criz had sailed these waters dozens of times, but on 15 April 2025, the sea served up a sound he had never heard, deep, hollow thuds echoing through the fiberglass hull. At first, he thought the rhythmic pounding was stray cargo containers or a sudden squall. Then the wheel jolted violently. The boat's rudder, the very limb that lets a sailor write a straight line across an indifferent sea, began to judder like a jackhammer. Criz's first instinct was to drop sail, calm the boat and peer over the stern. What he saw made his throat seize. 3 black and white silhouettes the size of pickup trucks circling like muscle-bound shadows, each sporting a dorsal fin taller than a grown man. One rose beneath the rudder and shoved again. Another bit down and twisted. A third slapped the water, signaling something that felt alarmingly like teamwork. GoPros mounted on the rail captured everything. The shuddering deck, the cursing crew, the wild spray as the rudder stock finally cracked. News travels fast when terror looks majestic. Clips of the crippled yacht racked up millions of views before the rescue tow even reached port. Headlines screamed rebellion. Memes portrayed orcas in pirate hats. But beneath the sensationalism bubbled a more profound question. What drives the ocean's smartest predators to dismember our technology? The Iberian Peninsula is a global crossroads. Warm Atlantic currents collide with cold Mediterranean outflows, creating nutrient-rich turbulence that fattens sardines, then bluefin tuna, then the apex predators that chase them. Shipping lanes braid under the gaze of the Rock of Gibraltar, funneling 48,000 vessels a year through a corridor scarcely 15 kilometers wide. In this watery choke point lives a remarkably small, genetically unique clan of killer whales. Fewer than 50 remain, and their entire social tapestry unravels if even one thread snaps. Their normal life is part ballet, part marathon. Biologists from the Atlantic Orca Working Group have documented hunting sequences that run for hours as the whales shadow shoals of bluefin tuna, using currents like conveyor belts and echo clicks like sonar fences. When the seasons turn and tuna pulse north, the orcas follow. When quotas tighten and tuna vanish to deeper waters, calves practice hydrodynamics by surfing ship wakes. Mothers nudge them into favorable eddies, and the clan sustains millennia-old traditions unseen by human eyes. But sometime in the spring of 2020, a younger cohort discovered rudders. It began with exploratory nudges, then escalated to deliberate rammings. The learning curve angled upward at broadband speed. Within a single season, reports soared from a handful to dozens, then hundreds. By 2023, the Atlantic Orca database logged over 700 interactions, a bloodless euphemism that lumps adrenaline-spiked fender benders with full-on sinkings. Most wildlife stories involve humans intruding into an animal's habitat. This one feels inverted. The animals are intruding into ours, or so the headlines scream. In truth, the orcas have always shared this corridor with us. What changed is their behavior, and the change rippled outward like gossip through a high school hallway. Young whales tried it first, adults copied or tolerated it. A quirky experiment became a cultural meme, and the meme became a hazard chart pinned to marina bulletin boards from Galicia to Gibraltar. Ask a marine biologist why these orcas target rudders and you'll get 3 competing theories, all of them plausible, none yet definitive. The play hypothesis frames the whales as oversized Labradors with chew toys. Rudders spin, vibrate, and leave a trail of turbulent bubbles. For a teenager with 50 interlocking teeth and Olympic-level muscle tone, that is candy. Observational logs show juveniles initiating 83% of first contacts. They circle, mouth, then slap the foil with a fluke before escalating to a coordinated ram. The pattern reads like playground experimentation scaled to several tons of mass. The revenge hypothesis is darker. Some researchers point to a 2019 incident in which a subadult was reportedly clipped by a long-line fishing vessel near Barbait. Trauma, the argument goes, can ripple through an orca pod. These animals pass knowledge down maternal lines longer than elephant family trees. Audio recordings reveal dialect differences akin to regional human accents. Why not a passed-down vendetta? The story is cinematic. a scarred matriarch named Gladys Blanco orchestrating strategic strikes, and catnip for reporters. The data, however, remain circumstantial. The practice makes predators hypothesis has gained momentum recently, buoyed by high-resolution stomach content analysis and drone footage. Bluefin tuna are living torpedoes capable of 80-kilometer sprints. Disabling the tail multiplies hunting success. Disabling a rudder is biomechanically identical. When tuna stocks are abundant, orcas spend less time chasing food and more time on what scientists politely call agonistic object play. Simply put, downtime breeds hobbies, and hobbies sometimes get out of hand. Whatever the motive, the anatomical focus is laser-sharp. The whales ignore propellers, solar panels, even drooping fenders that look like saggy seals. They go straight for the steering gear, bending metal stock 90 degrees or snapping it like spaghetti. Once the rudder is ruined, they often lose interest, as though the game ends when the toy breaks. 8 out of 10 repair invoices list rudder assembly complete replacement. The median cost €18,750, not counting ruined vacations and psychological lacerations. Chapter 4, Eyes on the Offenders. In early April 2025, researchers from the Spanish Institute of Oceanography suction-cupped high-definition cameras to 3 juvenile orcas dubbed Uno, Dos, and Tres. The devices, nicknamed Orca GoPros, rode the whales like sleek, parasitic barnacles for 6 hours before popping off and floating to the surface for retrieval. The footage delivered a whale-eye view of a rudder assault and rewired what scientists thought they knew. Uno approaches the stern of a 30-foot sloop at dawn. He drifts sideways, banking an eye toward the spinning bronze propeller, then nudges the rudder stock with chin-level precision. Dos slides under and bites the wooden foil, bracing it between rows of conical teeth honed by years of fish scales. Tres arrives last, uses her melon as a battering ram, and imparts a torque that sends the tiller aboard swinging like a metronome on caffeine. The crew shouts, a winch handle clatters across deck boards, and the attack pauses, only to resume in coordinated 20-second bursts. Slow-motion playback reveals even more. Uno shifts position based on Dos's approach vector, avoiding collision. Sound analysis indicates coordinated vocalizations at 6.5 kHz, distinct from their tuna hunt clicks. The implication is unsettling. The whales are not just playing, they are communicating roles in real time. That sophistication elevates the interaction from curiosity to cultural ritual and presents a conservation puzzle with more moving parts than a shattered steering quadrant. Intermission, the lens that rode a Leviathan. Cutting-edge wildlife tech rarely makes headlines, but the 2025 Iberian Orca project changed that narrative overnight. The research cameras adhered with a bespoke blend of beeswax and lanolin so the devices could detach without tearing skin. Engineers spent months modeling hydrodynamic drag to ensure the housings wouldn't whistle at cruising speeds, potentially alerting the whales or skewing behavior. Each unit packed a 4K sensor, inertial measurement unit, and acoustic logger into a footprint smaller than a paperback. The recovered footage did more than capture spectacle. It offered scholars the kind of frame-by-frame kinematics usually reserved for Hollywood CGI. Analysts measured impact angles, bite force proxies, and even microbubbles tracing water flow around pectoral fins. Such granular data rewrites textbooks, but it also humanizes the whales. Viewers could see Uno's eye pivot inquisitively, almost mischievously, as he considered his next move. It is difficult to paint an animal as a malicious monster after watching it ponder physics with the casual curiosity of a child tapping a fishbowl. Chapter 5. Fear and Loathing in the Cockpit. Ask a sailor who has felt an orca shove 12 tons of fiberglass sideways whether the wordplay feels adequate. Most answer with the 1,000-yard stare of someone replaying a near disaster on loop. Insurance claims have spiked 28% for boats under 50 feet in Iberian waters. Some policies now exclude rudder damage within known orca interaction zones. Charter companies reroute deliveries, adding days and fuel costs. Marinas north of the hotspot brim with off-season refugees waiting for a lull in reports. Sailing forums swap DIY deterrence with the fervor of apocalyptic preppers. One skipper blasts death metal through underwater speakers. Another hangs a mesh curtain of PVC pipes like a plastic kelp forest. None of these MacGyver rigs has passed peer review. Worse, a few may endanger the whales they aim to repel. inviting legal scrutiny under European wildlife protection statutes. Emotional turmoil flares in courtrooms as easily as on the water. But Chapter 5, Supplement. The human cost beyond hulls. Economists studying maritime psychology, yes, that niche exists, have begun tracking rudder anxiety as a quantifiable variable. Vessel traffic through the strait fell 12% in the first quarter of 2025, a dip large enough to skew European freight indices. A cruise line rerouted an entire spring itinerary, adding an unscheduled stop in Madeira to detour the hotspot, costing an estimated €1.2 million in port fees and passenger compensation. Sailing schools report cancellations from students unwilling to practice man-overboard drills in water patrolled by curious cetaceans. Mental health professionals now include Orca incidents in courses on marine-specific PTSD. Testimonies reveal recurring nightmares of invisible giants hammering hulls, of rudders snapping like wishbones with every creak. Dr. Sonia Valdez, a trauma specialist in Lisbon, notes that the unpredictability of encounters, there is no reliable forecast, only probabilistic zones, breeds a dread akin to living in earthquake country. You don't know when the ground will shake, only that eventually it will. If this deep dive into orca intelligence and human hubris has you riveted, subscribe to Eco Era now. Your single click fuels further investigations, turning environmental mishaps into teachable moments rather than tabloid fodder. Chapter 7, The Science of Culture. Culture was once a human monopoly, a word anthropologists guarded behind ivory towers. Now it roams freely among primate troops, corvid flocks and cetacean pods. The rudder ramming fad checks every box: novelty, transmission, locality, persistence. Ethologists tracking the behavior note how it emerges only within the Gibraltar subpopulation and has yet to appear among Norwegian orcas famous for herding herring onto beaches. That geospecificity suggests social learning rather than genetic predisposition. If it is culture, you cannot eradicate it by removing a single rogue individual, a point policymakers sometimes forget. Early calls to euthanize the aggressive matriarch fizzled under scientific scrutiny. Kill one whale, and another may step into the role. Behavioral change has to come from environmental context, forcing the culture to adapt naturally. Some conservationists compare the task to shifting teenage trends. Lecture all day, but if you really want to kill disco, you flood the market with hip-hop. Chapter 7. Supplement. Cultural echoes in deep time. If the rudder fad is cultural, it invites comparisons across species. Primatologists recall Japanese macaques who began washing sweet potatoes in fresh water, a trick that spread over a decade. Orcas operate on an even grander canvas underwater across dozens of nautical miles with no fixed communal campfire. That such a sophisticated meme can propagate hints at a communication network richer than our hydrophones can eavesdrop, this parallel provokes a philosophical quandary. Culture shapes identity. If we deem rudder ramming cultural, then stifling it resembles not just behavior management, but cultural suppression. It is no longer pest control, it is censorship. The real ethical debate may not revolve around property damage, but around the limits of human authority to delete whale traditions deemed inconvenient. Chapter 8. Economics of a meme. In 2024, shipping delays attributable to orca interactions cost an estimated €9 million in extra fuel, repairs and layups. That figure pales beside the €250 million annual value of the Strait's bluefin tuna fishery. But public perception obeys narrative gravity, not balance sheets. A damaged yacht goes viral. A balanced ecosystem rarely does. Cruise liners now include an orca clause in fine print, disclaiming responsibility for wildlife-related itinerary changes. Ports levy interaction surcharges at fuel docks, each €5 fee funneled into a modest research grant that hardly offsets a single shattered rudder. The ripple expands. Marine equipment manufacturers market orca-proof rudder guards fashioned from titanium-reinforced steel. A Spanish tech startup hawks an AI-driven siren that detects orca clicks and emits a low-frequency groan said to mimic a larger whale. Early buyers report mixed results, but the devices sell out within hours, undeterred by a €2,000 price tag. Local eco-tour operators walk a tightrope. The same whales that thrill tourists also terrify yacht owners. Operators brand their excursions responsible orca encounters, promising minimal disturbance and maximum Instagram potential. Critics argue the extra boats might teach whales new targets. The industry responds by adopting voluntary speed limits and using electric outboards, leveraging quiet propulsion as both eco-friendly credential and free marketing. Meanwhile, conservation NGOs ride the publicity wave to lobby for stricter shipping speed caps and more ambitious tuna recovery plans. Their core message is simple: if humans want calm seas, we must respect the food web that feeds the whales. Politicians, eager for coastal votes, commission glossy mitigation reports heavy on colour-coded flowcharts and light on enforceable legislation. Chapter 9. Unanswered questions. Despite terabytes of sonar logs, satellite pings and viral social clips, 4 mysteries loom like unexplored trenches. First, why now? The behaviour surfaced during 2020's pandemic lull when shipping noise dipped to World War II levels. Did the quieter acoustic environment allow young whales to experiment without sensory overload? Or were they, like humans, simply bored during planet-wide lockdown? Second, why here? Comparable orca clans cruise Alaskan fjords and Antarctic pack ice without a single documented rudder attack. Is there a unique confluence of prey density, ship types, and acoustic signatures along the Iberian coast that acts as behavioral fertilizer? Third, why juveniles first? Youthful curiosity is a universal catalyst, but researchers note the phenomenon spread upward into adult cohorts rather than downward into calves, defying typical learning hierarchies. Perhaps the novelty's risk premium, potential propeller injury, dissuaded protective mothers from early adoption. Fourth, will it spread? A lone report from southern Brazil hints at copycat encounters thousands of kilometers away. Biologists monitor global sighting databases the way epidemiologists scan for patient zero. If social media can cross oceans in milliseconds, cultural memes might ride migratory corridors just as swiftly. Solving these puzzles is urgent. The Iberian orcas teeter on the edge of viability, with inbreeding coefficients comparable to captive panda populations. A single oil spill could tip them into oblivion. Yet public sentiment wavers when an endangered animal appears to menace human property. The clan's fate may hinge on whether we frame them as villains, victims, or something more nuanced. Wild minds grappling with a world reshaped by humans. Conservation geneticists warn that the Gibraltar clan's effective population size may be as low as 20 individuals once you adjust for non-reproductive calves and social non-breeders. Such bottlenecks, you see, compound the stakes of every policy decision. A single entanglement in discarded fishing gear could well erase a decade of genetic diversity. Researchers have proposed last-ditch measures, sperm banks, cross-breeding programs with distant relatives, but these remain contentious, a biological Hail Mary thrown against the clock. The most pragmatic path forward blends science, seamanship and storytelling. Science supplies data on migratory choke points and risk factors. Seamanship adapts, quieter propulsion, sacrificial rudder sleeves, designated no-loiter zones near tuna schools. Storytelling shapes perception, casting whales as problem solvers rather than monsters, sailors as resilient collaborators rather than helpless targets. Pilot programs are already afloat. One Portuguese port trials a volunteer convoy system. Yachts cross the hotspot in tight groups, escorted by a fisheries patrol vessel towing an acoustic decoy that lures whales away. Early data hint at a 60% reduction in interactions, and according to smartwatch logs, a measurable drop in skipper heart rate. Spanish authorities deploy smart buoys that relay orca presence in near real time to an app, allowing sailors to reroute like drivers avoiding traffic. On land, the Cruising Association hosts workshops where cetologists and sailors share horror stories over coffee, building empathy molecule by molecule. One lecture teaches sailors basic whale acoustics, encouraging them to listen before they panic. Decoder rings for the ocean's click-whistle language. Each handshake, each anecdote, stitches a patchwork peace treaty across species lines. Startups are pitching solutions that sound pulled from speculative fiction. One projects programmable biomimetic decoy fish trailing beneath ferries, drawing orcas away like a magician's flourish. Another proposes a blockchain-verified Orca interaction credit system, where vessels that transit safely earn tradable tokens, turning best practices into currency. Critics call it green-washed gamification. Proponents argue that capturing market forces is the fastest route to behavior change. Long-range multi-beam sonar fences, essentially invisible curtains of sound, could redirect whales without physical barriers. The trick is calibrating frequencies that irritate orcas but spare non-target species. Engineers joke they are designing noise with just the right amount of rudeness. Whether Mediterranean shipping consortia will bankroll such acoustical etiquette remains to be seen. 2 weeks after Captain Chris's ordeal, his yacht sits on blocks in a Cadiz boatyard, barnacles curing dry under the Andalusian sun. Workers remove the shredded rudder, exposing a scarred post that looks eerily biological, like bone gnawed by time. Repairs run into 5 figures, but the skipper remains philosophical. "Captain Critz, I'm not angry," he says, running a hand along fresh fiberglass. "Those whales were doing what whales do, pushing boundaries. We sailed into their laboratory, uninvited participants in an experiment they're still designing. If humanity had half their curiosity, we'd solve a lot more than broken boats. Out beyond the breakwater, the tide hums its ancient baseline. Somewhere beneath, Uno, Dos and Tres spin through emerald corridors, perfecting the next move in a game that is part hunt, part hobby, part cultural rebellion. The sea is their classroom, every rudder a chalkboard, and we, cramped bipeds with fragile toys, are just beginning to read the lesson." Humans and orcas share one trait above all, a restless drive to explore, test boundaries, and swap clever ideas. Sometimes that overlap yields poetry, sometimes splintered rudders. The future of the strait may hinge not on domination or avoidance, but on negotiation. A conversation across the liquid frontier of language, where each side strives to listen in a dialect the other can trust.